Kingy is alongside of me. Kingy, the best bits of the game at the SCG last night. Did you find any?
Absolutely. There's always beauty in a win. And the Saints supporters are entitled to put a big smile on their face today. They don't care how you win, as long as you win. They're 8-4. They're absolutely rolling. In 3 weeks' time, you'll look at the ladder and you'll have complete disregard for how the game was won. It's just the fact you won it. I was thrilled last night to see the third term, particularly the start of the third term and then the start of the last, when they really took control with their toughness across the ground. And we touched on it before. I think Mitch Owens sets a standard of this football club well beyond his years, and has become one of the really significant members of this team. Not just a young player who can do some things. He's a significant barometer into their game day fortunes.
So that was the best bit, and you can chuck in Wangani Millera, and you can chuck in Philippou and the upside to him, and you can chuck in King, and you can go, okay, well, when they sacked Brett Ratton, they said they didn't have enough A-graders. Well, you can see 4 A-graders there that they've got, and that is the nucleus of how you can build your side around those 4 young stars. So that was the best bits for me. Their last quarter was enormous. 17 entries. Felt like Sydney just couldn't get the ball out of their defensive 50. And, I mean, they scored a couple of goals from 50-metre penalties, which was a bonus. And the legitimacy of those, we can debate, particularly the one with Errol Gould and the umpire giving him not enough warning to actually come back or not enough time to come back. But they deserved the win. Best bits for me, they laid 100 tackles, Kingy. It was a ferocious performance. We don't speak about tackling a lot, but it's an insight into your mindset, I reckon, particularly when you go to a ground that's traditionally difficult to win. I know Sydney have got a poor record at the SCG this year, but it always used to be one of the more daunting places to play because you knew every kick you got you were going to have to earn, and the Saints made Sydney do that last night with 100 tackles.
Yeah. The pressure was good from both teams. I liked this game. I thought St Kilda's ability to move the ball was there all night. They just couldn't get their hands on the ball regularly enough. So I just want to back over the Owens from a statistical point of view. So I think that the most important contests to win are those when the ball's in flow going into your forward half. So if you can win 2 contests in a row, you're scoring. So it's the post-clearance contest that we talk about. Mitch Owens won. He led all comers last night, winning 11 contests when the game was in general play. That's a massive number. He was the AFL number 1 after about round 9. I think Hoyne put on the radar as a young kid, and that's just what he does. So I'm thrilled for what they've been able to get out of this group so far. I don't know how far they can go, St Kilda, but that's not really a discussion for today, is it? It's just congratulations, tick the box. It wasn't just Sinclair again. It wasn't Steele just winning the game for them. It was the next wave of player.
Yep, Saints fans, you can jump on 1300 736 736. Let's have a listen to the coach, Ross Lyon, on how he thought the game played out last night.
Look, the game really ebbed and flowed. I thought both teams, first quarter in particular, struggled, still played the dry weather footy. It was very slippery and very difficult conditions. And then I thought Sydney really adapted their game style and were just taking the contest on earlier than you would normally, and it rewarded them. So we just addressed that at half time, and then I thought we did that.
Ross thought there, speaking after. The other best bit for me was the streaker last night, Kingy. Did you see that guy move?
Evasive. Yeah.
He took down 12 security guards. He made them look foolish.
Nearly rang Simo. I said, I've got one for you. He's been harder to catch than half your blokes.
And then he jumped into the stands. Did he get away? Does anyone know who this guy was? Did he get away? Because in terms of highlights last night, that was hard to top in a bit of a dour affair. Now this
didn't happen to see the security guy going through the absolute centre wicket area, did you?
I saw him slip.
He hit the deck.
Yeah, he did.
It was a bad moment for him.
He didn't have his moulded screw-ins on. He didn't have his long
100
stops.
metres off the play and went to ground.
It doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence if there was a significant event at the SCG that those security guards could handle it. This is how Brian Taylor called the streaker. This audio thanks to Triple M.
He's running with straight legs. There he goes. Oh boy, they converge on him. One's gone down. There's 15 men dressed in black out there, and he's going to beat them all to the other side of the ground. And up the race he goes. He's got away from them all. He's beaten them all. He's gone from one side of the ground to the other. 15 men dressed in black chase after him.
How good from BT. Right, let's get to the worst bit. So I'll kick us off. Sydney had 13 entries in the first quarter and didn't score. They won ground balls, they won clearance, which has been a significant issue for them, and did not score. It just doesn't happen on a small deck with as much quality as you've got in that lineup to actually not score. Clearly, a lot of it has to do with the Saints and the way that they held up behind the ball. They maintained almost that wicketkeeper quarterback style of play that Sydney had a lot of trouble with in general play. But Kingy, that's not a great result for them.
Yeah, and we can argue this, and I know we lauded Isaac Heaney's game last week against Patrick Cripps coming up at stoppages and then charging forward, and that was the perfect role for him, the perfect matchup. But I just don't see him as a midfielder. I think he's a forward line player. He has 16 touches last night, no real scoreboard impact. He didn't hit the scoreboard himself, nor did he set up goals as a midfielder. So I just think you need to keep a threat close to goal. Papley tried hard, Buddy tried hard, but it just wasn't coming easily for them. So I know there was no Mills and no Parker, so you don't get the luxury of a glut of high volume midfielders, and there's no McCartans, and you can talk about Logan McDonald all you like, but they have to keep Heaney inside that forward 50 for me, full time, to be any sort of threat of kicking a score.
Well, he should be doing what Owens is doing, isn't he? When you asked who does he play like, there is a bit of Heaney about him in terms of that aerial ability in the one-on-one contest down the line, provide that target, and then win contests in your forward 50. So he started on ball last night, looked as though he was going a little bit to steal at times like he did with Cripps. Papley started on ball as well, but they've got to be their two most dangerous forwards. So, I mean, it's a big fall-off. We lauded the way the Swans played last year, the Don Pike influence, the way that they were moving the ball with speed, the weapons that they've got in terms of field kicks in their side, and then they rock up and kick 9 goals in Thursday night footy against a team that didn't play finals last year. What's happened?
Well, they've got some injuries. The McCartan boys take away your centre-half back, full-back, and that just has a flow-on effect, doesn't it? You have to put players down there that are not necessarily AFL standard. They're AFL
Melican,
players.
Francis.
Yeah,
I mean, Francis had to play on King.
Yeah, they just get beaten too regularly. So that's just their circumstances at the moment. But I'm looking past that. I just think the next off season or two, they'd have to find 4 or 5 players. It's like really competent AFL players to add onto these lists. It's not just go back. It's not just stick with the draft for me. I'm worried about where they'll be in 2025, and we haven't said that for a while.
No,
what's life after Franklin and Rampy and Hickey and the guys that are. The guys that are hitting the 30s now or in the early 30s that are not going to be their mainstays. I'm concerned about their list. I'm not sure where you sit.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about it just because we've spoken so much about the young group coming through together, and that's more been the focus, that this is going to be a team that is going to have the weapons to carry them forward. Logan McDonald is going to be a really important piece of that, and his development and how quickly that happens, and if it happens, is going to be important. What happens with Amadi? Like, is he a genuine second option? Don't know. Hasn't been to this point, but I saw him rip Hawthorn apart in the first half earlier on this year, but how much does that count for? So they got some questions. De Koning, is he one that they go after, and is that the right fit for them in the ruck and forward? Probably don't mind that.
They've got to spend for that too, don't they?
Yeah,
I mean, this is the discussion we had.
They do, and it's always tough to get people to Sydney with the cost of living and all that. Franklin's money will help, but he's taken a lot less this year, so they just had to sign Blakey for 7 years. They've paid Mills, they've paid all of them.
Marty's going almost 24 years of age and has played 20 games of footy, so like he's not. They're not locks.
No.
Is I guess where we're going. The biggest concern for me last night is we leave another game of football unaware of what the actual rules are regarding the tackle. Well, how can we still be having this grey area at round 13?
So let's have a listen to how the Channel 7 commentators tried to make sense of the Dan Butler tackle last night.
Is that a dangerous tackle?
Looked like Blakey was winded.
I
think what cost him there was Blakey didn't know that the tackler was coming, so he hadn't braced for contact, and with the head bouncing a bit, might have looked worse than it was.
Yeah, I hope Dan
Nothing
Butler's,
wrong with the action.
Yeah, I hope Dan Butler's okay, because that was desperate, brilliant stuff in the end, and hopefully Nick Blakey just a little wounded. On first glance, I thought outstanding. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, it was textbook. Obviously, that intensity when you get near the ground is something that you've got to be very careful as a player.
Yep.
So there, we've probably got 4 different opinions there in the space of 30 seconds. They went on to discuss it for probably, felt like 4 or 5 minutes. And this isn't a criticism to Channel 7. This is just a reflection of how confused we are. That is the host broadcaster having no idea if that's a legal tackle or not. So that has to be a reflection of the footy fan. Like, on first view, you just go, bang, great tackle. Don't you? Like, perfect tackle.
I think you do. I didn't. I think we've just got to be careful we're not going from the driving, spearing tackle or the absolute sling sort of 2 actions.
The Nathan Broad one. Pick him up and dump him.
The intent to hurt. It wasn't there in that tackle last night. And we're going to have some accidents along
100%.
the way where players are going to be concussed or injured. And we just have to wear that because that's our game. And that was an incident like that. But we were confused in the post-match last night as to... I said he gets off because that's just a natural tackle. Jason Dunstall said, well, we don't know. What if he was concussed? So what if he was concussed? Is that an automatic report/suspension?
Look, and that's a great point that he makes, and this is the reflection. So we got 7 there. We got you guys pondering and asking the question because the AFL have made it so confusing. I don't think it matters that he's concussed because the action was a legal football action. It's like people can get concussed, as I've said a couple of times, as a player goes through a specky. You get concussed. That's an accident. That is a legal football action. If you drive your knee up, take a mark, someone hits your knee, like we've seen a couple of times this year, it's a legal footy action. He's concussed, but that's just what happens sometimes. That's the way I see it.
So you're saying no case to answer? No
case to answer.
I agree.
But once again, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a week. Footy fans, 1300 736 736. Are you as confused as ever over what is a legal action in the game?
But why can't Chriso come out today and say, look, this is where I said it. There's no case to answer here. But just so to clear the grey area, for all those out there, if he were concussed, it would be A, B or C. That actually inform us. Because the fact that we still don't know week to week is the concern.
Good problem to have, Kingy. The Collingwood match committee meeting would be interesting for Monday's game. Dan McStay now available for selection. Jamie Elliott back or available or hoping to be, provided he gets through training. What do they do with the forward line structure? And is Dan McStay an automatic inclusion, considering the improvement of Ash Johnson and Mason Cox? Who are you picking? Is he going to go through the VFL, Dan?
I think you have to go through the VFL when you've missed a block of 5 or 6 weeks, don't you? Well, I think that you have to maintain some selection integrity.
If we're picking the prelim final team for the Pies, McStay or Johnson, is it simple as that, or is it more McStay versus Cox? Do you go with 2 rucks? Like what? These are the discussions that they'll have.
And this is the next dozen weeks of footy, isn't it? You got to work out what works for you, what makes you better, what works for the team. It's not necessarily the size or the attributes of the individual. They've got to complement each other. This is the beauty of McStay. I think he plays, and I think he's a key member of that forward line because of his versatility.
At the
right up the
expense
ground.
of, though?
Well, it's not he puts heat. He puts performance heat on guys like Johnson and Cox and all of them, really, to say, hey, if you're not firing, we've got one ready to go, ready to replace, and that's the beauty of being a good team. Did you hear him talk about Pat Lipinski?
He's available as well.
He's available, and the way Craig McRae talks about his players is the way you want your coach to talk about you. This is what he can do. This is what he brings to us. His kicking's in fight. We've missed his kicking. We've missed his run. He makes us a better team. I thought, what a statement. And there's no grey area there. Hey, what about the Western Bulldogs? So there's a huge game for them tonight, massive. And I know we talk a lot about the Dogs, but it's a seismic change to be bringing back Josh Bruce and Alex Keith and leaving out Ryan Gardner and to a lesser extent Tim O'Brien. But that's a big shift to go with two key defenders coming in on selection change.
It is in the 1 week.
In the 1 week.
I mean, he just flips. He does flip the lineup a lot. Now you could look at it and go, okay, well he rewards performance, but then you're looking at some of the other guys like O'Donnell who gets rewarded every week, regardless of not having big impact on the game. I can't get a read on it, is to answer your question, and I'm assuming that's the reason you're asking the question as well with Bevo and the way that he picks his sides.
And being a big night tonight, how do you see tonight unfolding? Western Bulldogs, Port Adelaide.
Well, I've had faith in the Western Bulldogs' talent all year, and this is the question of whether they're maximising that, and you would have to say no. But I mean, you'd be pretty brave to pick against the Dogs at Marvel with the talent, with the lineup that they've got. But equally, Port have won 9 in a row, and as Josh Jenkins told us, their record at Marvel is very, very good. So it's one of those genuine who knows games. It's like last night. I just would have thought Sydney were absolute guaranteed to win that last night at the SCG. So
I want to see Rory Lobb do something tonight.
Where's he start? Where does he start?
I don't care where he starts, but he's taken 2 contested marks in 5 games. He's kicked 3 goals in his 2 goals in his last 3 games. You're talking about rewarding players who look a threat but aren't a threat. You'd have to put Lobb in there with O'Donnell at the moment. They've got some selection integrity to work through.
Can they hit a target as well? There's some very good kicks in their side, not kicking the ball well at all. And that goes for in front of goal, but it also goes behind the ball as well. And Bailey Dale's ball use at times this year for a very good kick has been poor. Bailey Smith is the same. And even the Bont's ball use last week wasn't what it should be and what it usually is. We're working our way through the agenda. If you want to put something on the agenda with us, you can do so. I just read that Geelong are going to offer Fremantle ruckman Sean Darcy $1 million a season. $1 million.
Who wrote that?
$1 million. It was a Fox Footy article.
These figures.
No. Well, I'm not.
Fox, no. The media.
I read
just
it on
Fox
these
numbers.
Footy. The report came out of the West. It said, "Would you pay Sean Darcy $1 million? Is he the next $1 million man in the AFL, Sean Darcy?" Look, I like him.
Well, you like the coning, and you think he'll get.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. It backs up my point that someone out there is paying ridiculous money. I heard $900 for Himmelberg. Sam McClure said in the Age if he leaves. $900.
Well, $500's about the average wage for a reasonable AFL player.
Is Himmelberg nearly double the average player though?
Well, that's a good question.
I don't think so.
It's a very good. It makes the contract of the Franklins and the Dustin Martins look ridiculous.
Dangerfield.
If those guys can pull that sort of money.
Yeah, like Dangerfield's got 8 All-Australians. I doubt whether he's ever earned $1 million. He may have, but he not for when he's in the sweet spot of his career and not what he left Adelaide for. But if that is the case, Fremantle should wave goodbye and say, all right, Geelong, you're going to pay him $1 million. You want to come up with something pretty good because he's a free agent at the end of next year, I think, Sean Darcy. So then they are in the lap of the AFL gods. But I'm not sure they need to genuine A-grade ruckman, as we've spoken about before. What else
do you owe an apology?
Agenda?
Do you owe an apology?
Do I owe an apology?
Yeah. I've just been watching. There's a kid at the Kangaroos the last 3 weeks. His name's Will Phillips. He's going very well. He was a focus of yours there for a while when you were looking at the list and saying things were failing and things were never going to correct and the world was going to stay dark for 20 years. And people had to vacate their positions. 10 in a row. Yeah, but you get, not all victories have 4 points attached. I think I want to discuss the list going forward. Yep. Are you now? It sounds to me like you're a believer.
No. I was captivated by what Wardlaw did, and I'm a firm believer that one draft can change the direction of your club.
That's not the question. It's not the question.
So that's my answer.
Are you now a believer in Phillips and the crew, Wardlaw, Sheasel, LDU, all those guys in there? Are you now a believer or not?
No, I'm not a believer. So Phillips was around the selection of having so many midfielders when the Logan McDonald pick was there, and I think he handballs way too much. So, but look, he's a small handballer would be the criticism around him. But that's not to say that there's not a room. There's no room for that. Like he's He had 18 handballs and he had some tough
Yeah.
moments, good clearance, and his last fortnight's been very, very good. But is he going to be a maximum damage pick 3, Christian Petrarca style damage that you want from those picks? I have my questions over that.
Okay.
But I think he can play 200 games, which would be a good result.
Okay. 200 games.
Does that
now.
answer your question?
Not really. I felt like you've been more positive about the Kangas
100%
the last few
I have,
weeks,
and they deserved
now you
it.
say you're not a believer.
No. I still think there's some questions
Okay.
about
All right.
where they're going and what happens with Clark and all of that. So but what I have loved is the increase in effort. So that was around my criticism earlier on in the year that the effort just dropped away. That is back.